Once every 4 years, half the human race watches the same game at the same moment, the single biggest shared event in human history. This one sport moves more money than most nations make. It has helped start a war, and it has helped stop one. So what would the world be without it? Where would all that passion, money, and raw tribal loyalty have gone instead? This is what would happen if football never existed. Here is the answer. The world would be quieter, poorer, and lonelier than you would guess. Because football was never really about football. It became the most powerful machine we ever built for turning strangers into a tribe and for draining the ancient urge for war into something that spills no blood. Take it away and that urge does not disappear. It just finds somewhere darker to go. To see how a simple game gained this kind of power, start before it even had rules. For most of history, there was no such thing as football. There was just chaos with a ball. In medieval England, whole villages played a game called mob football. Hundreds of people, 2 towns, a pig's bladder for a ball, and almost no rules at all. It was violent. People were injured. People sometimes died. Kings tried to ban it again and again for centuries and completely failed. Because the urge it fed was older than the game itself. The urge to belong to one side and to beat the other. Then in 1863, in a single room in London, a handful of men sat down to write the rules. They argued over one question above all. Could you use your hands? They decided no. And with that one choice, they split the game in 2 and accidentally wrote the rules that would conquer the world. Because here is what made football different from every game before it. It needed nothing. No expensive equipment, no special ground, just a ball, any open space, and 2 things to mark a goal. A game the poorest child on earth could play. So when British sailors, workers, and engineers carried it across the world, it did not stay a British game. It took root everywhere it landed, and then it belonged to everyone. Within a few decades, a village brawl from England had become something no empire, no religion, and no language had ever managed to be. Truly global. And that is when football became something far stranger than a sport. It became identity. Your club is not just a team you support, it is where you are from, who your family is, which tribe you were born into. 100,000 strangers singing the same song, sharing a joy and a grief most of them will never feel anywhere else in their lives. In an age where the old bonds of village and faith are fading, football gives people something rare and precious, a place to belong. But a machine that powerful has a dark side. The same passion that unites a city can turn a crowd into a mob. Hooliganism, riots, violence at the gates. The tribal instinct football channels so well is the very same one that, let loose, has always torn us apart. Which is why football's real power was never on the pitch. It is what it can do to entire nations. In 1914, on the first Christmas of the First World War, something almost unbelievable happened. Along parts of the Western Front, soldiers climbed out of their trenches, crossed into no man's land, and by many accounts, kicked a ball around with the very men they had been ordered to kill. For a few hours, a game did what generals and governments could not. It reminded enemies that they were the same. But football can cut the other way just as sharply. In 1969, tensions between El Salvador and Honduras were already boiling over land and migration. A series of bitter World Cup qualifying matches lit the fuse. Within weeks, the 2 nations were at war. History remembers it as the football war. Thousands died. The game did not create the hatred, but it focused it like a lens into something that finally exploded. And then decades later, football proved it could do the exact opposite. It could heal a country torn in 2. Ivory Coast had been broken by civil war for years, split between a rebel north and a government south. Its greatest footballer was a striker named Didier Drogba. In 2005, moments after his team qualified for the World Cup, Drogba fell to his knees on live television and begged his countrymen to lay down their weapons. 2 years later, he went further. He had a crucial match moved to Bouake, the rebel capital, the very heart of enemy territory. Soldiers from both sides sat in the same stadium and watched their nation play as one. Days later, they signed a ceasefire. A footballer had done what the armies could not. So now imagine erasing all of it. Every match, every club, every World Cup. What would actually be missing? The most obvious loss is the money. Football is a river of hundreds of billions of dollars, and whole economies, cities, and careers are built on its banks. All of it simply gone. But the deeper loss is invisible. Football is the closest thing humanity has to a single shared language. Without it, that one moment where half the planet feels the same thing at once never comes. The greatest icons of the modern world would be unknown, and the billions who found belonging inside a stadium would have to find it somewhere else. And that is the unsettling part, because the need football fed does not vanish just because the game is gone. The hunger to belong to a tribe, to face down a rival, to pour your whole heart into an us against a them, is one of the oldest and most dangerous things about being human. Football took that ancient, flammable urge and for 90 minutes at a time, made it beautiful and mostly harmless. Without that release valve, it does not cool down. It builds, and it looks for another outlet in politics, in religion, in the street. So the next time you see a crowd of strangers weeping and embracing over a ball crossing a line, do not dismiss it as only a game. You are watching the most successful peace machine ever invented, disguised as entertainment, a way to go to war with each other every single week and shake hands at the end. A village brawl, born in the mud of medieval England, became the one thing that could make half the world hold its breath at once, not because it is only a game, but because somehow it is so much more than one. Thanks for watching. If this deep dive made you see the world a little differently, please subscribe to the Sidro Files, and a like or a share helps the channel grow more than you'd think. I'll see you in the next one.